Interplay of Great Tradition and Little Tradition, Unit 5.3. Now we shall discuss. Now we shall discuss this topic, interplay of great tradition and little tradition, which is Unit 5.3 in Paper 2 of Anthropology. First of all, traditions. Traditions are the customs and beliefs which we have been following since ages. They have been followed by our ancestors, they've been transmitted to us, and we also follow them, and we also transmit it to our future generations, right? So anything, in our everyday life, we can see various traditions, be it in the food habits, be it in the dress which we wear, the rituals, the practices which we do, the customs which we follow, right? So celebration of festivals, be it Dasara, Ganapati festival, Diwali, all this is a tradition. Cooking in an earthen pot, that is a tradition. Lighting lamps for Diwali. No matter how many sophisticated new LED lights and everything we have, when it is Diwali or when we are starting any new, on any auspicious occasion, or when we are starting any new venture or some puja, or whenever we are venturing into something new, we always begin it by lighting a lamp. So that is again a tradition. Wearing a sari is a tradition. Worshipping God is a tradition. Saying namaste is a tradition, right? So say we celebrate the Ganesh Chaturthi every year. So even though now we have so many different forms of Ganesh in plastics, made out of plastic, or even precious metals like gold, silver, and also out of various other materials. Still, for Ganesh Chaturthi, what do? We make a Ganesh idol with clay and we celebrate the festival and immerse it in water. So, these are all various traditions which we have been following and which we have learned from our ancestors and which we also transmitted to our future generations. Very, very simple things which we follow in our everyday life, like wearing a bindi, wearing a bangle, all these are traditions, isn't it? So, what are great tradition and what are little tradition? So, the traditions which have been followed by elite people, the elite population of the society is called as great tradition. Whereas the traditions which are followed by the folk people, rural people, peasants, all these are considered as little tradition. Why is it so? So, the great traditions have been said that they have a national character or they have a wide reach. That is, these traditions have been mentioned in the religious epics or religious texts like Ramayana, Mahabharata, and so on. So, they are completely unambiguous, they are rational, they are not superstitious at all. They have a proper logic and way of celebration and so on. So there is complete order and it is very organized. So these traditions which find their mention in religious epics, and they have also a national character. That is, these traditions are being followed by huge number of people throughout the length and breadth of the country. These traditions are considered to be great traditions. Whereas the people belonging to the great tradition consider the little traditions as superstitious. They say they are unorganized. Okay, they do not have any proper logic or rational behind their celebration. So they have not been even mentioned in any of the religious texts. They are just transmitted from one generation to another through oral repetition. So in little traditions or folk tradition, you can see that they do not write it in any text to transfer it to generations. It is just that they will be following it and they transmit it to the next generation by teaching their children. That is how it has continued across generations. So these little traditions are looked as mere superstitions by the great tradition people. Also because The little traditions have a very limited character or very limited reach. That is, these traditions are followed only in few parts, either in a particular community or in a particular region or in just few villages. So they are not national in character. You cannot find too many huge population of people following these traditions. That is why they are called as little tradition. And neither do they find that they are mentioned in any of the religious texts. Okay, so further with examples, we will discuss what exactly are this little tradition and what are the great tradition. First and foremost, for great tradition, I can give you an example. Okay, so great tradition. A very good examples, as I already told you, so many examples are there. So great tradition, very good example is celebration of Dasara festival, celebration or worshipping of Lord Shiva, celebration of Ganesh Chaturthi. All these are the examples of great tradition. Why? Because these traditions have been mentioned in the religious epics or the religious texts, and these have a very wide character or national reach. That is, you can find these festivals like worship of Lord Shiva, you can find that right from Himalayas up to Kanyakumari, and from east to west, from north, south, east, west, everywhere you can find people worshipping Lord Shiva. So these are great traditions. Whereas on the other hand, for little tradition, I can give you the example of Jallikattu. That is a famous festival which is celebrated in, that's a tradition which is celebrated during Pongal festival, right? Jallikattu. So this is the famous tradition of Tamil Nadu, which is celebrated during Pongal festival. So this is a little tradition. You can find that this tradition is limited to few districts of Tamil Nadu alone. That is mostly the southern districts. Whereas you cannot find this tradition being followed throughout the country, isn't it? And another example is this cheek and tongue piercing ceremony, which usually happens as a offering to Lord Subramanya. So most of us know that whenever we go to Tirupati, right, what do we do? You can find that many children and even men and even few women also, they tonsure their heads and they offer their hairs as offering to God, right? So similarly, this is one practice again followed in most parts of Tamil Nadu and in few regions outside of Tamil Nadu as well. So there is this month, auspicious few months when there is, celebrations for Lord Subramanya, and on those particular days, on those festival days, people worship for something, like they pray to God that they should succeed in something, or they must succeed in their career, or they must get married, or whatever problems they have, that their health problems should get resolved. So like that, they are various, they have certain needs which they ask for God, and as a offering, they do this to God. So what they do is they take this trishul and they pierce it across their cheek, or they pierce it to their tongue. So this is a very common practice, in everywhere around Tamil Nadu, and even in other places also. To certain extent, you can witness this. Say in Delhi also, there is one Lord Subramanya temple where you can see that even UPSC aspirants, they wish that they have to clear the exams, and they also go and do these kind of offerings to God. Okay, so these are all again little traditions. So like this, if you check in your region or in your locality, there will be lot number of little traditions which are being followed. However, you cannot find any of these traditions being mentioned in any religious text, or they do not have any proper order, or it is not organized also. So these traditions, the little traditions, are looked as mere suspicions by the great tradition people. Okay, so I think now you got a fair idea about what is great tradition and what is little tradition. The great traditions are the one which are being followed by the elite people. They have been mentioned in the religious text. They have been followed by huge number of people throughout the country, and they are properly organized and they are rational in character. Whereas the little tradition are the traditions which are oral, that is, they are transmitted across generations through oral repetition. And these are the traditions which are followed by the folk people, rural people, peasant society, so on. Okay, they do not have any proper logic behind them. It is just that their ancestors have been following that and they are just following it like that. So it is not based on any rationality, and it also has a limited reach. That is, only in few particular regions you can witness these traditions. Okay, so this is about little tradition. So now I already gave you examples for what is great tradition and what is little tradition. Now, you might ask me, so I told you in your own regions and localities, if you look around, you will find so many different traditions which have been followed, and you yourself can understand whether these are little traditions, or what, who follows this, have been mentioned, have these traditions been mentioned in the religious text, and so on. Okay, so but you must be also wondering, are these concept of great tradition and little tradition limited only to Hinduism or Hindu traditions? No, definitely not. You can find little tradition and great tradition in other religions also. Say for example, Christianity, Islam, all these also have little traditions. Say if you consider Christianity, there is, I think all of you are very well aware of this temple called as Velankani temple. Velankani Church in Tamil Nadu. It's in a coastal region. So this is Velankani Church. Okay. So in this church, you can find that it's infant. It is a church of Mother Mary, okay, Virgin Mary Church, and lot number of followers go to this church with the belief that whatever they go and pray to the God, that will come true. Okay, it is not just people from southern India, even people from North India and throughout the country with lot of belief they go to this temple and pray for whatever they want. So in this, in this church for whatever they want. So why am I so interchangeably calling this as a temple is because here it is not just the Christians who go and worship in this church. An equal number or even more number of Hindus also go and worship Mother Mary in this church. So there's a very interesting story behind this church and why it is so powerful and why why so many people go and offer their prayers over there. So during the 18th century, there were a lot number of travelers, sailors who were looking for new places, and the Portuguese also were among them. And once the Portuguese ship was traveling to Sri Lanka along the western coast, that is through Bay of Bengal. So the Portuguese were ardent worshippers and devotees of Mother Mary. Okay, so they were very much devoted to Virgin Mary, Mother Mary. And when their ship was sailing to the Bay of Bengal to reach Sri Lanka, in between, so there was heavy rains and the waters became very turbulent and it was followed with thunder, lightning, and everything. So these sailors got very scared and they believed that this is going to be the end of their life and they cannot, go back to get back to shore and they're going to die over there. So then these people being ardent worshippers of Mother Mary, what they did is they knelt down, that is they went on their legs in the ship, all of them, all the sailors, everyone, they went on their knees in the ship and they started worshipping Mother Mary. They said that Mary, Mother Mary, please save us from this turbulent waters, and we do not want to die now. Please take us to some land, just take us to some shore, and wherever we are going to land, there we will build a church for you. So it so happened that after they started praying, after some time, the turbulency reduced, and finally the ship became stable, and it landed in this place where it is now situated. Okay, in the coast of Tamil Nadu. So when it landed over there, they got down from their ship and they prayed to Mother Mary for saving their lives, and they built a church over here. So that is why this church is so famous. Okay, and there is people believe that whatever they wish for will be granted over here if they go and pray to this church. So this is what are the little traditions that we can see here is in a number of people other than Christians, a higher number of people who are Hindus worship this church. So when they go to this church, they will not pray like Christians. What they do is they will take coconut. Okay, they will take coconut. They will go do puja and break the coconut, and they will do puja with camphor, incense sticks. They'll put flowers. Okay, so these are the traditions which we follow in Hinduism, isn't it? When we go to a temple, we light the incense sticks, we light the camphor, and we do puja like this, and we break coconut and we offer fruits to God. So you can see that exact traditions being followed here in this church for Mother Mary. Okay, so that is one very good example of little tradition which has been followed in Christianity. So again in Islam also, if you see, this is the Dargah, which is in Nagaur. Okay, so there is a place called Nagaur in Tamil Nadu again. Nagaur, it's called Nagaur. Nagaur Dargah in Tamil Nadu. So this is a mosque which is again, visited by more number of Hindus than Muslims. So most people have the belief that again here this is a very famous mosque, and if you have any wishes, if you go to that place and if you pray with all your heart, your wishes will be granted. So even here you can see it has been flocked by large number of Hindu population apart from the Muslims. So what these Hindus do is again they will, you can see that there is a festivals which are happening here. So these people, Hindus go there again. They do puja with all the incense sticks, camphor. Okay, they will break the coconuts. They will offer flowers and fruits to God. So this is how they do puja there also. So that is again a an example of little tradition in Islam. Okay, so here especially in this church, that is Velankani church, there is one festival on September 8th that is called as September festival. So usually every year on 8th of September, this festival is conducted, and on this day you can find so many Hindus going and giving their offerings to Mother Mary over here. Okay, so these are all very good examples of little tradition. This is a little tradition in Hinduism. I told you Jallikattu. This is again little traditions which are followed by other religions. So now I guess you have a proper idea about what are great and what are little traditions. So now you must be thinking, is it so easy that there are so many traditions in our country, isn't it? So already we know our country is so diverse. Every 100 or 150 kilometers, if you travel, you can find there are so many changes in language, religion, culture, food habits, dressing, everything. In whichever part of the country you move to, there's so much of change. There's so much of diversity in our country. So, if you see in any region, you can find so many traditions which are followed. Can we just classify them into two groups, saying one is great tradition and one is little tradition? Is that a possibility? So, that is what S.C. Dubé said. Okay, so S.C. Dubé is a very famous, renowned Indian anthropologist, and the contribution of each of these anthropologists we will be studying in a later chapter. The contributions of L.P. Vidyarthi, Meckham Marriott, Milton Singer, S.C. Dubé, okay, many more renowned anthropologists are there. What are the contributions they did and what are the studies which they did, and all these things we shall be discussing in a later chapter. So S.C. Dubé in 1965. Okay, so S.C. Dubé in 1965 he said that Indian traditions are so complex. Okay, there are n number of traditions and they are so complex. And how is it possible that you can divide all the traditions of such a diverse country into just two groups, saying one is great tradition and one is little tradition? So he said that that is not a probability. That is very difficult to classify all traditions like that. Instead, we can go for a sevenfold classification. Okay, so he said we can classify the traditions into classical tradition. We can classify the traditions into classical tradition, regional tradition, local tradition, Okay. Western tradition, emergent national tradition, and subcultural tradition. And even Saraswati preferred to call these traditions, greater traditions, as Shastriya traditions. Okay. So, however, S.C. Dubé said that there is enormous traditions which are followed in our country, and it is very difficult to classify all these traditions into just two groups or into a bipolar model of great tradition and little tradition. Hence, it is preferred to classify these traditions into classical tradition, regional tradition, local tradition, Western tradition, emergent national tradition, and subcultural tradition. Okay, we need not go into depth of each of these traditions, just knowing that is sufficient. So the concept of great tradition and little tradition was given by Robert Redfield. Robert Redfield is again a very renowned anthropologist, and about his contributions also we shall be studying in the later classes. So Robert Redfield, when he moved to Mexico, he got so much interested in the Mexican culture, and he started working for the revival of the Mexican culture. And during this time, he gave the concept of great tradition and little tradition. And this concept of great tradition and little tradition, which was given by Robert Redfield, was extended to the Indian context by Mickey Marriott and Milton Singer. So the concept of great tradition and little tradition was given by Robert Redfield. And this concept of great tradition and little tradition, which was given by Robert Redfield while he was studying the Mexican communities, was further extended to the Indian context by Mickey Marriott and Milton Singer. Okay. So the concept of great tradition and little tradition was given by Robert Redfield while studying the Mexican communities, and it was extended to Indian context by Mickey Marriott and Milton Singer. So now we know what is the meaning of great tradition and little tradition. So we always observe that there is always an interaction which goes on between great tradition and little tradition. The great tradition elements or traits are moving towards the little tradition and vice versa. That is, great tradition elements are moving towards little tradition and little tradition elements are moving towards the greater tradition. And now we must also think that when great tradition elements and little tradition elements fusion is happening and interpenetration is happening, do they lose their qualities? No. See, we might wonder that when little tradition elements are moving towards great tradition elements, little tradition will get lost or lose its elements. That does not happen. So whenever there is movement of the little and greater tradition elements towards each other, there is always a fusion and interpenetration of the traditions that is happening. Okay. So, Mecca Marriott studied a village called Kishangarhi in UP, in western UP. There he observed the movement of little tradition elements towards greater tradition element and greater tradition element towards a little tradition element, and he explains this with the help of examples. So, I told you there is always a constant movement of great tradition elements or traits towards the little tradition and vice versa. So, when there is movement of great tradition elements or the great tradition towards the little tradition, then it is called as parochialization. Okay, so the movement of greater tradition elements or traits towards the little tradition, that is, this is a universal. These traditions are universal, whereas by moving towards the little tradition, they are becoming smaller or they are becoming parochialized, and hence that process is called as parochialization. Whereas the reverse is also happening. That is, the little tradition elements which are limited to very small regions or very small communities, or very limited to folk culture alone, or limited to villages or peasant society alone. So these little traditions which have a limited reach, okay, these traditions are also moving towards the greater tradition. So what happens when this happens? So when little tradition elements are moving towards greater tradition, they become universalized. That is, now when they move towards greater tradition, it becomes more and more popular, and more people start following it. So it gets more recognition, right? It becomes more and more valued, it gets more recognized, and more people start following it. That is, it is becoming universalized. That is why this procedure is called as universalization. Okay, so now you understood what is the process of universalization and what's the process of parochialization. The movement of greater tradition elements towards the little tradition. The movement of greater tradition elements towards little tradition is called as parochialization, and the movement of little tradition towards greater tradition is called as universalization. Now, Mick Marriott studied the studied these processes of universalization and parochialization in a village called Kishangarhi in the western UP. So he gives examples for parochialization and universalization. So we shall discuss them now. You can also make one more chart for this universalization, parochialization. It can be written like this. Say this is great tradition and this is little tradition. So the upward movement of the little tradition elements towards the greater tradition element is called as parochialization. Okay. The downward devolution of the greater tradition elements towards the little tradition is called as, sorry, it's the other way around. So the upward devolution of little tradition towards the greater tradition is called as universalization. And the downward devolution of greater tradition elements towards the little tradition is called as parochialization. Okay, so in your exam, you can write a chart like this, either the one diagram which I drew earlier, diagram of the chart, or like this. So this will be a very good explanation, diagrammatic representation of what is universalization and what is parochialization. So the examples for parochialization. So, Milton Singer gives two examples. He observes that in this village called as Kishangari in western UP, he observes the movement of little tradition and greater tradition elements and he explains those with suitable examples. So first he explains parochialization using two examples. First one is Govardhan Puja. And second one is Navratri festival. Okay, so Milton Singer, when he went to, he studied this village of Kishangari, and he gives us examples of the interplay of great tradition and little tradition, that is universalization and parochialization. How the little tradition elements are moving towards the greater tradition and they are becoming universalized, and how the greater tradition elements are moving towards, or the downward devolution, they are devolving downwards towards the little tradition and they are getting parochialized, and those processes are called as universalization and parochialization respectively. So for parochialization he gives two examples of Govardhan Puja and Navratri festival. Okay, so I hope most of you all must have visited Lord Krishna temples, and there it is a common picture. Definitely, you go to any Lord Krishna temple, you can see this picture over there. Yes or no? So, what is this? What? Okay, so you must have heard this story in mythology. Whenever you go to Krishna, Lord Krishna temples, you can see this picture and the story behind that. So this is the Govardhan Giri. So it so happened that there was this a village of Braj, where these people of the village were basically farmers, and they used to take care of the cattle. They were the cattle herding, and agriculture was their primary occupation. So that place was called as Braj, and this hill was called as Govardhan Giri. So Govardhan means cow dung wealth, or it is also called as the possessor of cows. So whenever we say Govardhan, it means the possessor of cows, that is Lord Krishna, right? So who is the possessor of cows? That is Lord Krishna. So what happened was, every year the people of this of this village, they used to assemble together, and along with the ruler of that region, they used to offer their worship. They used to do prayers for Lord Indra, asking him to give sufficient rains so that they can have a proper agricultural season, and they get very good harvest, and they can have a good prosperous life. So this was a ritual which they used to conduct every year. But however, one year what happened, Lord Krishna, who was still a very small child, he said that what is the need to worship Lord Indra, asking him to give us rain? See, rain is a natural phenomenon. So what is the need to worship us? You just have to do your karma. So what is the karma? Your karma is to do agriculture and to herd the cattle and take care of the cattle. You do that, and the rains have to come automatically because it is a natural phenomenon, and there is no need to worship Lord Indra. So even the villagers listen to Lord Krishna and they do the same. So that year they do not worship Lord Indra asking for rain. So now what happens is, Lord Indra becomes very angry because the villagers did not worship him, and he sends heavy rain clouds. So there is enormous rain that is happening along with thunder and lightning, which leads to severe floods. Now the people are unable to stay here because of the flood condition. So what Lord Krishna does is, after a week of this, almost when the entire hill is going to get submerged and all the people and the cattle are going to get killed, so he comes to the rescue of the villagers. What he does is, he lifts the Govardhan Giri in his little finger, and he protects all the villagers along with the cattle. So after 1 week, the fury of Lord Indra gets subdued, and finally he calls back the rain clouds, and situations come back to normal, and Lord Krishna replaces the Govardhan Giri over here. So this is a story which we have heard from Bhagavata Purana, right? So that is, it has been mentioned in the religious text. So this is a great tradition, right? So it is a tradition. This Govardhan Puja is being followed by people belonging to greater tradition. So how has this become a part and parcel of this people in Kishangari in Western UP? So what these people do is, this Kishangari village is located, say, some around 40 kilometers away from this hill, Govardhan Giri. Okay. So what these people, how this Govardhan worship has gone, it has parochialized and it has reached this Kishangari village. So in Kishangari, you can find that people make um, you can find people celebrate this festival as Govardhan Puja in a little slightly different form other than how it is celebrated in the greater tradition. So in greater tradition, this is how they celebrate it in Lord Krishna's temples. But when it got parochialized through those 40 kilometers and it assumed a different form, that is, the greater tradition elements moved towards this village and it got parochialized as a little tradition called as Govardhan Puja. And here you can see that what these people do is they will take huge chunks of cow dung and they will make it in the form of a mold, like here you can see here. So they will make it in the form of a small hill and they will decorate it with corns and flowers and they will celebrate it. So that is called as Govardhan Puja in the Kishankari village. This is a very good example of parochialization of great tradition towards little tradition. Okay, so even in exam, whenever your examiners ask you to write about universalization and parochialization along with examples, you see, even though you can find so many such examples in your regions or in different traditions and so on, your examiners will always expect you to write these examples only. So whenever you are asked to write about universalization or parochialization, please stick to these examples which they have been given, that is Govardhan Puja and Navrati for parochialization, and for universalization we shall be discussing shortly. Okay, so this is about how the great tradition elements have got parochialized to little tradition by when it got traveled through those 40 kilometers and reached that village called as Kishangari. Next comes Navrati festival. Navrati festival. So we all are in great tradition. We have the during Dasara, throughout the country you can find the worship of goddess Kali, Amba, Lakshmi, right? So this Durga, Kali, Amba, Lakshmi worship happens mostly during Diwali, isn't it? So during Dasara, you can find in most part of the countries we in greater tradition we worship God Kali or Durga, goddess Kali or goddess Durga or Amba. This is the common practice which we follow in greater tradition, in great tradition. However, this tradition has got parochialized and it has reached the village of Kishangari and there it is celebrated as Navrati. Okay, so in Navrati they do not celebrate God Kali or Durga or Amba. Instead, they worship a local goddess called as Navrati, Navrata. Okay. So during Dasara celebrations in great tradition, you can find that we all worship goddess Durga, Kali, Amba throughout the country, right? Whereas in this village of Kishangari, you can find a similar worship. That is, during Dasara time only, they will conduct a festival similar to Dasara, but here the god of worship is Naurata. So this is one more very good example of parochialization, how the celebration of or the worship of Durga, Kali and Amba during Dasara time in the great tradition has got parochialized as Naratha worship in the Kishangari village of UP. Okay, so these two are very good examples. First one is the Govardhan Puja and second one is Navratri festival. So whenever even in your exam they ask about parochialization, you have to stick to these examples only, as your examiners will expect these examples. Okay, so this is parochialization. Now further we shall discuss universalization. So again we have so again for universalization we have examples of in universalization we have examples of Saurati and Solano. Saurati and Salano. Universalization. So universalization means the upward devolution of little tradition elements towards the greater tradition elements, and they get a universal reach. They become more popular. They start getting more popularity and more number of people start following it. That process is called as universalization. So again our Milton Singer gives the example from this same village called as Kishangari in UP. He says that the Saurati and Saluna festival. So during Saurati festival is usually conducted at the time of Diwali. What the people of Kishangari does is they worship God Lakshmi. Okay, so but here it is not Lakshmi. Instead, um, it is the image. They do not carve the image of God Lakshmi. Instead, it is a local goddess called as Saurati. It is a local goddess called as Saurati. So what these people do there is they will make powder out of rice. They'll make it into a paste or a flour and they will paste it on the wall in the shape of a god, and they will put flowers over that and they will start worshipping it. So what do we do during Diwali? So in great tradition, you can find that Diwali is a time of worship for goddess Lakshmi, isn't it? So what we do is we keep images of goddess Lakshmi and we keep idols of goddess Lakshmi. We keep lot of gold, silver articles, and we keep money also. You must have seen people make garlands out of currency notes and they place it over there. So you basically we worship goddess Lakshmi during the Diwali season. So what Milton Singer observes is that it is this Saurati festival which has got universalized into Diwali festival of the greater tradition. Here, the Kishangari people do not worship goddess Lakshmi. Here, the goddess of worship is a local goddess called as Saurati. So they make a image similar to that of Lakshmi, but that god is called as Saurati, and they worship that. So he says that it is this Saurati worship which got universalized into the Diwali celebrations which we conduct in the greater tradition. Okay. Similarly, Saluno festival. He says that in the village of Kishangari, what girls do is they tie a sacred yellow thread in the wrist of their brothers so that when they go out, it will protect them and it will help them in coming back safe to the village. So that festival is called as Saluno festival. Whereas in great tradition, we have a similar festival, isn't it? What is it? Rakhi festival, right? So it is coming up now in July. So it is what in greater tradition also we do the same thing, isn't it? We tie Rakhi to the wrist of the brother to ensure his safety and so that he is safe, to ensure his safety and to protect him from all evil so that he returns back home safe. So this is what Milton Singer says is, it is this Saluno festival of Kishanagari which has got universalized into Rakhi tradition in the greater tradition. Okay, so these are the two examples which he gives for universalization. So first, for parochialization, he gives two examples, that is Govardhan Puja and Navrata festival. And then for universalization, he gives two examples, that is Saluno and Saurati. So even whenever you get questions in your exam on these topics of universalization and parochialization, it is always advised to stick to these four examples only. So I hope you got a very good picture of how the great tradition and little tradition elements interact. But one very important thing which you have to keep in mind is the interaction between the great tradition and little tradition always keeps happening. It is a constant process. It does not cease. Always you can find that great tradition elements are moving towards little tradition and little tradition elements are moving towards greater tradition. That is, universalization and parochialization goes by hand in hand. So because of this, neither of the traditions lose themselves. It just leads to more and more fusion and interpenetration of the traditions. So neither does greater tradition lose its value or little tradition lose its value. It leads to fusion and interpenetration of the traditions. So this is what we call it as interrelation between the great tradition and little tradition. Hope you understood it well. Okay.